Welcome to East Coast Winemaking, the podcast that brings professional winemaking experience from popular wine regions on the East Coast of the United States to wherever you are. I'm your host, John Monier. I'm a Finger Lakes winemaker, and I'm excited to provide easy access to educational and entertaining interviews with other winemakers and industry professionals. In each episode, we'll cover the background and unique perspective of my guest on how they approach the craft of winemaking. I'm excited for the opportunity to learn from seasoned wine pros and hope these interviews can be informative to both colleagues in the industry as well as relative newcomers. Feel free to email questions or comments to eastcoastwinemaking@gmail.com and follow us at East Coast Winemaking on Instagram to be notified when new episodes come out. If you're interested in checking out my wine called John Albert, you can find info on that at johnalbertwine.com. What up, wine nerds? Hope everybody's doing super duper. Apologies for the delay on these couple of episodes coming out. It has been harvest time and life has been happening, but I'm coming back at you hard and fast with a handful of episodes that I have squirreled away. Today, I'm bringing an episode with a friend and colleague named Charlotte Buck, who is a Pennsylvania winemaker and vineyard manager. We had a great talk about all things Pennsylvania. I'm having a great time reaching out to people who are from other regions rather than the Finger Lakes, which I'm more familiar with. And I have more of that hopefully coming. So I had a great time talking with Charlotte, and I think we covered a lot of worthwhile topics that I hope everybody can learn a little something from, or at least enjoy. Anyway, here's my conversation with Charlotte. Hello, everybody from podcast land. I'm here with Charlotte Buck, Pennsylvania winemaker from Vynecrest Vineyards. What's the right?
Vineyards and Winery.
Vineyards and Winery. She is one of those fancy winemakers that also works in the vineyard, and we're going to speak more about that. Charlotte, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fabulous. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. I've got a little White Claw here. I had a good day. We've been being beaten down by hot temperatures in the Finger Lakes. I'm sure it's probably the same in Pennsylvania. And today it's like 75 or something. And so I have my window open and I'm not sweating in my own house for the first time in like what feels like 2 or 3 weeks. And so I'm quite good.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening to chat with me and share some of your insights on what it's like to be a Pennsylvania wine professional. As somebody who grew up in Pennsylvania but has only ever been a New York wine professional, I'm really interested to hear some of your perspectives, and it feels kind of like unknown territory for me. Our mutual friend Darren, who I spoke with, now he's a New Jersey guy, and so I didn't ask him any Pennsylvania questions. So I'm excited to be here and talk with you.
Yeah, that's great. I'm ready.
Would you just start off easy peasy and tell me the story of how you found yourself where you are, where your interest in winemaking and vineyard work began, and all the important steps that you hit along the way, whether it was personal milestones and realizations inside your own mind, or internships, or all the things that got you here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from a small town in Pennsylvania, Kutztown specifically. I was in college, Kutztown University, and I was studying, or I, graduated with a degree for fine arts and anthropology. So I was really on like a creative base.
So nothing ag related or
No.
winemaking related?
No, I do not come from any kind of agricultural background at all.
Fine arts and anthropology.
Yep.
Did you have in your mind when you were in school what maybe you were planning on doing at that point in your life?
No, I never wanted to go to college. My parents come from like that very normal, standard, very basic background of you have to go to college after school, and that's that. So I literally handed my art portfolio to the custodian at the time at the university, and he must have put it on the right desk. And that's how I got accepted into originally graphic design career path. And then that just wasn't for me. It was way too intense, way too tech based. So I turned over to a fine arts side of things where I was really focused on photography and painting. And then it kind of just, kind of kept going from there.
When you say your art portfolio got on the right desk, what like medium were you working in at the time?
It was
Photography and painting, or?
photography, painting, and drawing.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
I
just
feel like winemaking calls some artists, like for every math and
mhm.
science person, there's also a creative type at another winery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely a creative background there that is very innate. I have zero background in mathematics or science. I actually had friends take my math and science classes for me when I was in college. Just I regret that at this point, but I've had to teach myself again. But yeah, school, I finished that. And immediately after graduating, I moved to Philly. All my friends were moving, and it was a great time. And I was always working in restaurants and bars. But I ended up landing a gig at a photo studio where I was managing a photo lab for maybe 2 years, which was like a traditional photo lab. So we were developing film and working with all those old school technologies. But really, my job was standing in a dark room all day, developing black and white film. And it was incredible. You see a lot of images that it's creative processes. But I was doing that every day in the dark, and I was getting over it, and I was craving the sun. And it was just the right time in life after being there for a few years that I was just over it. I have to backtrack because when I was finishing my last year of college, I started working part time at a local winery. My parents actually went to a winery called Cedar Ridge, originally called Blair Vineyards. It's just around the corner from where I grew up. And they went there for a tasting and ended up talking to one of the owners. And they said that they were looking for somebody for the tasting room. And I was actually in Italy doing a research project for grant work. And I sent an email to the owner asking for a part time job in the tasting room for when I returned. And they offered me a job. I had literally no experience with wine at all. At that time, I was in college. My friends and I were drinking Bully Hill at parties, and that was my only experience to wine. But I started working in the tasting room and quickly fell in love with it. Loved the experience, loved the atmosphere, loved the people I was working with. And I really just was copying what people were saying about wine. But it was my first experience with wine where I was learning vocabulary and learning like this is a whole world that I have nothing to do with. So anyway, I was living in Philadelphia and working at the photo lab, and I was still going up every other weekend to work in the tasting room. So it's about an hour and 15 minutes back from Philly to where Kutztown is. So I was going up every other weekend to go manage the tasting room and just kept doing that. And then when it got to the point where I was looking to leave Philly, change my life a little bit, I was craving the sun, like I said. I asked the winery if I could do some part-time work while I was looking for a farm. Because at that moment I said, I'm going to be a farmer with no experience, no background. And they said, yeah, sure, go work in the vineyards. They need help. So I thought I would do vineyard work for maybe a couple weeks until I could find more of a traditional farm to work in. And I'm really glad that didn't work out because I have terrible arthritis in my knees, and vineyards are the perfect height for a person who doesn't like bending over too much. And I started working in the vineyard, and I quickly just absolutely fell in love. And that's where everything started.
Interesting. What was it about the vineyard work that you think got you, aside from being able to work standing up?
uh, I was outside, and I was outside all day following sun patterns, and time didn't exist. And I quickly realized that my time investment of labor was reciprocated with a product that I had already been falling in love with without really realizing it. But that connection was growing pretty quickly.
Hmm.
And because of the lack of labor at this time, this was just before COVID, like minutes before COVID hit. I There was a lack of labor, and I was able to really just start in every aspect of it. And I was fully invested.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, sounds serendipitous in its timing in your
Mm-hmm.
life.
It worked out perfectly. So I had been working in the vineyard then. At time gets a little confusing in my memory at this moment, but we had been working, COVID started, we started a whole grafting project. We grafted thousands of vines. At this point, I had been working in the vineyard through. And then I guess 2020 was my first harvest, and we were just starting harvest, and the person who was in the winemaking position, things got complicated, and essentially the day of harvest we had been picking, we were a couple lugs into picking, like I was out there at 5 o'clock in the morning picking, and I see the owner walk by, point at me in the middle of the row and say, come up. And they literally plucked me out of the field and said, we need you to be the person. And I had never even seen a harvest. I didn't know what any of it entailed. I had never read a protocol. I had never heard of a hydrometer. I had never cleaned a tank, essentially. I had done some labeling and inventory, and I'm familiar with the wine at this point, but I had never seen a single part of the production side of it. And they
That
said,
sounds
you're in this.
crazy.
It was crazy.
Do you have any idea why they chose you? I mean, were you just the closest warm body or
There weren't a lot of options. I think I was very familiar with this, um, the group of people at this time, and it had been a decent amount, like months, that I had been doing all of the production side for vineyard and grafting and all these other things. And I had already worked the tasting room. Like it had been years at this point that I had been working with them. So they knew my work ethic. Um, and I don't know, I guess they saw something. They needed somebody.
interesting? And
Put me in,
just
coach.
one of life's little surprises.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they bring you into the winery, and now you're a winemaker.
There we go. Just like that.
Interesting. So, how did that experience go?
It was very overwhelming, but it was incredible. I loved every second of it. I mean, everybody knows who works harvest. It's such an adrenaline rush. It was such an overload of information. And at that moment, I was so hungry for it. So I was reading anything I could find my hands to, anything I could find. I was watching YouTube videos. I was really listening to the people around me, the few people around me who knew what they were talking about, just watching. I learned by watching and doing. So kind of shy to ask questions, but I would watch and try to imitate their movements and try to internalize why they were doing what they were doing, and just kept going with it and just totally fell in love with it.
Did you have somebody there who had some firsthand knowledge and experience to be able to be a guiding hand, or were they just like literally start watching YouTube videos because you're the most educated person in terms of winemaking that we have here?
So this is not a new establishment. They had been around at this point probably about 15 years. So the owner, Rich Blair, he started it from ground zero up, and he had worked all aspects. So he was really, I guess, my mentor, still is. He's always been my biggest role model for this entire industry. They also had a consultant. Kathy and I work really well together. She would write the protocols. She'd come visit every few days to weeks, depending on time of the year. And she would definitely offer advice. And you know how it goes with protocols. You say one thing, but in reality, the practice is a little different. But we would work really honestly and well together. There was one intern, and he also had never worked in the wine industry before. So him and I were just very honest and vocal with each other. And the vineyard manager at the time had multiple harvests under his belt. So he was able to help guide me, even though he wasn't a winemaker. He was familiar enough where he could at least steer me in some direction. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a very humbling time, those first year or two.
I bet.
Incredibly overwhelming, but I was such a sponge. So I just took every moment. I'm by nature, and I love manual labor. I love working. I'm the kind of person who wakes up and immediately jumps out of bed, grabs a coffee, and goes to work. And I don't leave until the sun goes down. I've always been that way. I don't know why, but I love working. It's too much of my identity, which I'm working on, boundaries. But, it's just where I've always felt myself feel like myself. And this industry has offered me all the answers to the questions I'd ever been looking for. And I love it. It's just my life. It's my livelihood. And that was the answer to everything I'd been looking for. So I just fully embraced it, and I still do. Well, I just love doing it.
Well, I'm sure every boss that you've ever had loves that about you.
Unfortunately, yes.
Despite the fact that may make it more difficult to draw boundaries, but
yes.
Can I have you take a break in your story and tell me something in regards to what really grabs you or satisfies you in general about being in the industry? Is there something that stands out as to like what it is about being able to live the life that you live and do the things that you do that you think really calls to you?
I really appreciate being able to work with the land. Um, I think losing track of time revolving around sun and nature has been something I've always craved. I think it's very human. And being able to invest your labor of love into a product that is inevitably shared with community is pretty much my philosophy for my life, but also my work life. And I've been able to encompass that fully with this career.
Well, that's awesome. I totally recognize with the feeling satisfied in making something that you share with people that makes them happy. I mean, that was what drew me to winemaking to begin with, and it's one of the things that never changes. You know, to watch people buy and drink your wine, or to think about people sitting at their dinner table and eating dinner with their family and drinking your wine makes makes me happy. And I'm sure it makes everybody happy. Recently, I've been having to. I mean, this is never something that I didn't think was the case, but I'm mentally, like, consciously reckoning with the fact that the wine that I'm making myself, John Albert, and the wine that I make at Ravines is like my life, more or less. It's like all of what I do. But I've been thinking lately that for other people, it's just a period to the end of a sentence in a single day.
That's true.
And to go out there and to try and sell your wine, your inclination is to talk about it like it's going to be the best thing that ever happened to anybody that puts it in their mouth. And it's just not the case. The biggest compliment that I could be given is that if somebody chooses to drink my wine with their family over dinner or something like that, and it's like humbling in a very pleasant way. And anyway, just hearing you say that made me feel connected, because I feel the same way. The other thing that goes through my mind is I hope I'm not blowing up your spot too much, but to hear you talk about liking the feeling of being connected with the world, I just have to say that totally goes with who I know you to be, because I just learned that you don't have a computer or internet at your house. And if that's not qualities of the type of person that likes being connected to the earth and to the world around them, I don't know what is. So it sounds like you've found your niche. Anyway, sorry, continue. So you can pick back up your story after you had this crazy first vintage where you were shoehorned into being a winemaker.
Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, I definitely don't go into any of these days expecting anybody to come up and have their day changed because of the wine that they're drinking because I make or have participated in. Really, I'm selfishly indulging in every day I have to be able to spend my time the way I'm spending it. And I don't know if everybody has that luxury of being able to enjoy I know it, most people don't have that luxury of spending time the way that I do, that's revolving around seasons and days. But maybe that glass of wine or a couple glasses of wine will at least change the end of their day. I by nature don't drink wine unless I'm with other people.
Good for you.
I'm a big beer person. So, that's a quick turnover. They don't need to worry so much.
I'm going to ask you about your sipping preferences at the very end of the episode. So we'll get more into that. So now how do you get from this experience at Blair, right?
Mm-hmm.
To Vynecrest?
So I've been at Blair 10 years total between tasting room and then the vineyard and then in the winemaking position. And now really most of that first half of that was tasting room, just part-time back and forth. So really like concentrated winemaking, vineyard managing for 5-6 years. Became super close with the family who owns it. It's multi-generational. They just had their 21st year, I believe. And it had been my only experience in the wine industry. I mean, I have a lot of friends in the industry. I do a lot of research. I visit often, but working, I've never done an internship or a harvest elsewhere. And I recognize that for my career growth, I really needed to have at least some sort of experience elsewhere. I know that vineyard and that space like the back of my hand. We grafted, I don't know, maybe a fifth of that vineyard by hand, planted everything, not everything. I didn't plant everything, but I could point out every single plant. I've pulled leaves on every single plant for years. Like I know that vineyard. I recognized I needed time elsewhere. So in January, I started a new job at Vynecrest, which is only about 10 miles down the road. And I accepted a job as a winemaker, which I have practice in and I'm comfortable with, but it's not so much in the vineyard, which is a totally different change of pace for thinking processes. At the moment, I feel like I'm kind of babysitting the wines because I didn't make the wines previously, obviously. So we're approaching harvest. We're only a few weeks out. So I'm a little nervous, more nervous than usual because it's a totally new experience and it's all new equipment. But we've just been bottling and getting everything as ready as possible. So that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. I'm sure that if I were in your shoes, I too would be a little anxious going into this experience. But in some ways, I wish I could be a fly on the wall of what you're gonna go through this harvest, because from my perspective, I've been at Ravines for 10 years, and like you, it's the only place that I've ever been. Mm-hmm. And the thought of being in a new place with new surroundings, new hardware, and getting to work with grapes I've never worked with before fills me also with some amount of anxiety, but it also sounds really exciting. And so I hope you have a good experience this year, and that the exciting successes outweigh the negative Sunday scaries.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm anxious, but there's a lot of learning to be done. They have tons of hybrids. I've never worked with hybrids before. Totally different protocols, philosophies, practices. So it's all good.
Good.
Nervous, but it's all good.
Nice. We were discussing a little bit before we started, and I'm about to start asking you some of the questions off the little list that I have here. And I thought maybe now is a good time. You expressed that um, recently maybe you've been realizing to yourself about whether you're feeling pulled more toward the cellar or to the vineyard. Is now maybe a good time for you to share how you're feeling about that?
Yeah, I definitely have more experience in the vineyard. Since I've started, I've always managed the harvest on the winemaking side, facilitated those processes, not necessarily writing the protocols. I will be this year, which is definitely intimidating, but
I'm sorry,
I love
I spaced out for a second. Writing which protocols?
just the winemaking protocols in general. This will be my first year writing protocols start to finish and having full control over everything that goes on, which is crazy to consider that I haven't worked with half of these varietals.
Interesting. What are some varieties that you'll work with? That specifically some of the ones that are unfamiliar.
Chamberson, Treminette,
Oh,
Vidal, Vigneron. I could keep going.
those are good ones. I can understand your hesitance. Yeah, interesting. I've only worked with one or two of the ones that you named, and only in very small amounts. So, well, I'm interested to reconnect and see what your experience is like based on all of these
Stay
things that
tuned.
we've discussed so far. So, anyway, you can keep going.
Okay, hold on. I have to go back to the question.
That's okay.
Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah, so this is my first year truly owning protocol writing for winemaking and whatnot. But the reality that I am facing and looking in the mirror is that I am not the world's greatest winemaker. I'm okay with that. And I'm really just a vineyard manager who cares about making wine. But I do now know that that's really where my heart is. And I am anxious to get back into the field. I do work very closely with the current vineyard manager at Vynecrest, which is amazing. We work hand in hand, and in turn, I'm teaching him how cellar practices go. So it's been a really nice collaboration, which is really great. So nice to have somebody who is 100% here for partnership. We collaborate on a day-to-day basis, vineyard and winemaking. So we do share our time a lot on both sides. But moving forward, I'm really a vineyard manager who
Yeah,
happens to make wine.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I was hoping that, I think it's really healthy to hear, as somebody who has also struggled with how they fit into the bigger picture of the wine industry, and especially the local wine industry, and trying to assess your positives and or your strengths and weaknesses, and how you relate to the people around you. I think that it's an experience that I think everybody goes through, and I appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable as you're finding yourself in this whole thing, because I think it's something that, not to get too like woo woo here, but that anybody could or everybody could always benefit from hearing, to hear people be human, is very refreshing. I also, per our conversation, a lot of the things that I hope to ask you about are both Pennsylvania related things specifically, and also some vineyard related things specifically, given your much more significant knowledge about vineyard related things and Pennsylvania related things in comparison to me. So I think that helps frame, hopefully, the rest of the conversations that we're going to have. The first thing that seems like the right general place to start is I'm struggling as a New York wine only guy, basically, to recognize how distinct and how alike the Finger Lakes in Pennsylvania are. So I'm wondering, are there some strengths or quirks of growing grapes and making wine in Pennsylvania that people like me who are not part of Pennsylvania might not know about or consider? Is that too broad?
If we're comparing to the Finger Lakes
Or to anywhere, like
or
what makes
anywhere,
PA kind of what's unique to PA as far as you're concerned?
well, Pennsylvania has 4 very distinct seasons,
Hmm.
and they're almost very equally spaced out, which is really amazing. I think it does help with a growing season. I think we are underrated for our growing capacity. It's less known in the with the grape growing world. We definitely can grow vinifera. We can definitely grow hybrids. Um, we have a lot of struggles with disease, and we have to spray for that. There's almost no way about that, or no way around that, really.
Yeah, I mean Finger Lakes too.
Finger Lakes too, yeah.
Probably everywhere. I assume Virginia.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely have cold spots. We have warmer regions, but I think in general, it's not recognized enough. And I'm not sure if that's because we haven't collaborated on a statewide level. It's a huge state and people are growing everywhere. There's so many vineyards in Pennsylvania, and it's something that we're always collectively working on. Um, but we also have some crazy weather to work and deal with. But maybe our winemaking isn't as strong and it's something that we're working on. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that is an issue that I had considered before we started talking. Was I was looking up some things about vineyards as they relate to Pennsylvania, growing degree days, and stuff like that. And the internet was quick to point out that it really depends on where specifically you're talking about in Pennsylvania because it's so wide. That like Northwest Pennsylvania and Southeast Pennsylvania don't have a lot in common as far as grape growing is concerned. So I suppose like maybe it's a little ignorant to ask generally speaking about Pennsylvania as if one answer can be sufficient for the entire state.
Yeah, it's
So
like
I
that
suppose
whole
that's
like
a bit
it
of nuance that's
depends.
maybe important. Yeah, yeah.
It's always that it depends answer, which is annoying, but it is the reality. And we do have to regionalize ourselves, and there is no collective narrative for PA, which is a little frustrating. Like everybody wants there to be something that brings us together besides the Eagles, go birds,
Go
but
birds.
go birds. Besides that, like grapes, we've got everything. And I don't know. I'm used to growing 11 acres of Pinot Noir, which everybody says is crazy, but I think we do
That's
it
crazy
really
in the
well.
Finger Lakes.
It's crazy, but also it's so normal to me.
Hmm.
But now I'm growing hybrids. I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, growing Pinot sounds like a glutton for punishment, and then going to hybrids sounds like must be a lot more straightforward.
Work life balance.
Drawing those important boundaries. Um, this already is touching on something else kind of adjacent to what we're discussing that I wanted to ask you. I was surprised. It kind of sounded like the way that you were discussing your experience at Blair versus your experience at Vynecrest is that at Blair, did they only have vinifera vines?
Only vinifera.
That's
25
surprising.
acres.
I was expecting basically everywhere in Pennsylvania to all have a combination of both vinifera and hybrids.
They're, I don't want to say a rarity, but it's less common to have only vinifera. But yeah, 25 acres vinifera.
Interesting. For anybody who's listening who is like less aware of the logic that's going on here, vinifera variety, well, I can say it either way. Hybrid varieties are known for being more disease resistant and more hardy and generally easier to grow, require less sprays, and at least my New York colleagues' perception of Pennsylvania is that some of the climates maybe are less than perfectly ideal to be trying to grow vinifera, whether it's cold winters or hot summers and high disease pressure. That would maybe not necessitate hybrids but would push Pennsylvania more in the direction of trying that route, which is why I'm kind of surprised. And I mean, I don't want to say delighted, because poo-poo hybrids. Anybody who hasn't listened to my episode with Usonia, the New York winery, they make a lot of hybrid wine and some vinifera wine as well, but they make incredible hybrid wine that is some of the instances of my experience trying hybrid wine that gives me really a lot of faith in the direction that new age winemaking is taking hybrids, because they're delicate and sexy and fun. And anyway, so okay, so that's very interesting. I'm glad that we're discussing this, because I was already wrong in my perception about hybrids versus vinifera. Do you think that hybrids are like here to stay? I mean, if you were gonna like pick a grape as things are now, that's like the Pennsylvania wine. Like if the Finger Lakes has Riesling, and Virginia has, I think, Viognier, right, is one of the ones that they grow a lot of. Do you think Pennsylvania, by the quality that they're able to make, or by the amount that's being grown there, what their wine would be, and if it would be a vinifera or a hybrid variety, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a conversation we have frequently, and it's almost a collective narrative that we could do a Chambourcin and a Cabernet Franc agreement almost across state. Most growers have at least one of those, with success, of course. And it could be, but there's also so many other things that are being grown that definitely deserve recognition. There's people growing Gruner, there's people growing Pinot Noir, there's Cab Sauv, there's a little bit of everything. It's totally possible where we are. It's just really about that site selection, doing the homework before planting, and having a really good sprayer.
Yeah, Cab Franc's a really interesting one. From my understanding, Cab Franc is pretty hardy and like resistant. I know that in vintages in the Finger Lakes where we have some rot in different grapes, the Cabernets, which are always one of the last grapes to come in, often are not suffering as much as some of the other varieties. They seem thick-skinned and like they can do well. And so Cab Franc totally makes sense to me. I have next to no experience working with or understanding how Chambourcin grows, but Chambourcin is a red variety.
Yep.
Do you have? Can you describe in any way what kind of wine Chambourcin makes? I always think, when I think about red hybrids, I always think about spicy, and I don't think that's always correct. But as I'm thinking about, I wonder what it tastes like, my brain's like, it's probably spicy.
I'm a terrible spokesperson for Chambourcin, because I think Chambourcin tastes like wood chips left in your grandma's basement or attic.
Interesting.
And left to rot.
That sounds like some Pinot that I've had.
Yeah. No, but
some P-Funk.
There's definitely a more professional way of saying that there is an herbaceous, woody, medium-bodied characteristic that's pretty, I don't know, fluid with Chambourcin. It's very versatile. You can do a lot with Chambourcin. I haven't had a lot that I love and go back to. It's something I'm constant. If I see it on a list, I always try it because it's never the same, or it's never made the same. So there's a lot of versatile characteristics with it, but it's not my cup of tea. But I'm practicing.
Fair enough.
If it works for some people, then it works. It grows like a freaking weed. Today I was out scouting, and at Vynecrest, they started training Chambourcin from high wire to VSP, just as an experiment on some of the rows. And I think it's the second growing year for that transition. And there's 4 to 5 clusters per shoot. And these things are monsters. They are like 2 handfuls per cluster. And we are clearly thinning those. But
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, ideally, I'd like to go 1.5 per shoot.
Wow.
on average, but they're massive. It's
So
crazy.
that would be
So
like, I mean, let's say ideally speaking, you're talking about dropping like almost 3/4 of the clusters.
yeah, I would like to from a winemaking stance. I think that would be the best decision for it, but we'll
Dang,
see if that's
that's
the reality.
crazy.
It's crazy. So, you have something you're not spraying as often, it's more disease resistant, and this is a very wet summer. We've had so much rain. So, if we can use this as a varietal, but also a backbone to some kind of blends. We are in a region that's very accustomed to sweet wines, fruit wines. So that's always something we have to do for our clientele. Our local customer base is on the sweeter side, no matter what kind of wine you're producing. So we need to have something for everybody.
Sure.
So throw some Shamerson in it.
Interesting. In your time as a winemaker, have you found it difficult to navigate the making wine that's intended to like hit the clientele right where they like it, whether it be sweet wine or fruit wine or whatever? And is that distinct from, or maybe they want, some really conventional dry wine or something like that? Is that different than the wine that like satisfies your winemaking urge? I mean, is there tension between this or maybe is there a distinction between the wine that you feel like either you or your colleagues want to make and the wine that the public wants to drink?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge thing. By philosophy, I drink bone dry Pinot Noir straight out of the barrel, happy with it. Let it age for 5 to 10 years. I'm good to go. The clientele in this region wants sangria.
Hmm.
In 2 weeks, I'll be bottling wine that we're bringing up to 20% RS essentially. So it's
Wow.
this constant battle of, the wine that sells to pay the bills, which there's nothing wrong with it. If that's what you like, that's what you like. And I'm happy to
Totally.
make it. But it's hard to make sweet wine. It's honestly such a pain in the ass. Like I'm getting used to it, but that's what sells. And when you find the people who are drinking your dry wine and I don't know, something similar to what I would prefer to be sharing a bottle with them, like I really appreciate that. But I don't know. If you're drinking wine, you're drinking wine. And I think that's cool. I'm not here to judge anybody's taste. It is
Totally.
what it is.
I totally agree. I don't mean to sound like I'm poo-pooing people who prefer sweeter wine. If there's one thing that I've learned being in the wine industry, it's that there's a wine for everybody and
Mm.
a customer for every wine. The spectrum of wine that people make is massive. Yeah, it's just interesting to consider. It feels like a issue that I have yet to wrestle with, which is, I guess, why I'm asking. I work at a place whose style is very defined, and when I worked in the tasting room, I can remember with some regularity getting people in whose taste was, they were not interested in drinking anything dry, and we had to be like, unfortunately, I don't really have anything that I can pour for you. We have some
Mm.
Riesling that's quite like juicy and like fresh and fruity, and maybe you'll like it, but it's dry. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm sure that it's something that as my career and experience continues, maybe I'll have to run into. Do you feel like that issue is distinct from wine region to wine region? Like you've been up to the Finger Lakes. Do you get a vibe that it's different in Pennsylvania than it is in New York?
Yeah, definitely. At least in the Finger Lakes specifically, I think overall the wines are on the drier side and people are flocking there for that reason. At least people who I'm familiar with, like from my area, people go to the Finger Lakes because they know that they can find the style of wine that they want and they can go from place to place to place and find it.
Sure.
Whereas here in my region, which is Southeast PA, you have people walk in and they say, I only drink dry wine. And when you tell them, oh, we have all of these options, they're so relieved because so many places, at least the places that have been around for at least a decade or two or three, have a fairly significant sweet list. And there's definitely a greater attitude of trying to change that, get into the drier side, and bring people over, but it's definitely slow coming. And it's more frequent to find people who are drinking the sweeter wines.
This is just sparking a thought, which is, as we were discussing before, the size of Pennsylvania and the difficulty maybe in all of the wineries connecting like together and working together on a single purpose. Does Pennsylvania have like very tight AVAs that are very distinct? Do you know?
We have a few. I think there's 5 or 6 of them. We're Lehigh Valley AVA, and there's a bunch in my region for that. And there's a few more. I honestly don't know what they're called. And actually was just looking at a map the other day. If there's not an AVA, there's regions. But when you look at the map, you have Pennsylvania, then there's just like little slivers with little circles that say a region. Because it's so all over the place and it's just way too big. Like, I've never been to the other side of Pennsylvania. I've been to the Finger Lakes at least 5+ times. I've never been to the other side of PA. It's too far. I'm not going.
I grew up outside of Philadelphia and I was never in Pittsburgh.
I've never been. It sounds cool. It's so far away.
I'd like to go taste some wine from there.
Yeah.
Interesting. For anybody who doesn't know, AVA stands for something like American Viticultural Area or Association or something like that. It's like a geographically defined, area where, for example, we have Finger Lakes AVA, and then we have tighter ones that are like Seneca Lake AVA, Cayuga Lake AVA. And so depending on like where you're getting your grapes from and where you're producing your wine, you can identify as being within a specific AVA, which just, says to the producer, like, this comes from here. Right. Okay. If somebody gave you 5 open acres to plant tomorrow, what would you plant there?
I think most people would not be happy with my answer, but mostly Pinot Noir.
This is really interesting. I did not expect you to be such a Pinot queen.
I love Pinot. It's my preferred wine. I love making Pinot. It's what I have made since day one. I love the process of making it. I love the delicacy of it. I love the brattiness that it requires in the vineyard. But it keeps me on check. Keeps me
like it gives you some attitude and like threatens to be
it makes me not lazy.
Weird. Interesting.
You have to pay attention to it. It keeps me on point.
Wow, you said a couple things since we've been talking that really makes you sound like a glutton for punishment. A vineyard manager who likes growing Pinot in Pennsylvania.
It's not fun, but it is fun. I don't know. I think it's great. And every year is so different. So there's a lot going on there. That would be my biggest one. Probably Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Semillon. Those are my favorite whites to be making.
Semillon, interesting.
Yeah, I love Semillon.
Is there a significant amount of Semillon in Pennsylvania?
Not significant, but we had a couple acres of it. Or Blair has a couple acres of it, and it grows beautifully. It's incredible. Huge clusters also.
Interesting. I'd like to try some.
I'll bring you a bottle.
Please. I'm really surprised. I was surprised when you said it. That is really interesting to consider. Okay, Pinot. I know one of the things that we really like about Pinot is its versatility. We put Pinot into rosé, we make it into dry red, we make it into sparkling, it goes into a blend. And I have to imagine, are either of these places doing any sparkling or anything like that?
Yeah, so Blair, we were doing sparkling traditional method. I was starting that program and it's so much work, but the outcome is incredible.
Interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of places are doing forced carb. So I haven't done that myself. I'm not so experienced with it.
Me neither.
I'd be interested to learn it. It's fun to drink, cheaper, quicker turnaround. open it without feeling guilty, the weight of the bottle. But yeah, traditional method sparkling, totally doing that. Love it. Glutton
Cool.
for punishment there, I guess.
uh, um, all right. What are Pennsylvania's biggest like weather related stressors in the vineyard? I know, for example, the Finger Lakes the past couple of years, I think it was 22, we had a super cold winter, and we had a bunch of varieties that were when they came in the next year, the yields were way low. It was a lot of like secondary clusters. Pinot was one that got totally not wiped out, but we ended up making rosé from Bois Frankish that year because we just had like no Pinot. And then last year we had, oh no, I'm sorry, not last year. In 2023, we had a spring frost that did similar things. And it like blew the region up for a couple weeks before people determined if they were okay or not. What are some of the things that you've seen in Pennsylvania that are weather related vineyard issues?
We haven't had as terrible frost issues. I know some people have had little pockets of frost damage, but really it's rain. We've had so much rain over the past few years. Today it rained 3/4 of an inch, and it's been such a wet summer. So we just have wet, wet, wet summers recently. Last year was incredible. We didn't spray through the entirety of harvest, and it was phenomenal. Everybody was just celebrating every day. It was so dry. It was amazing. But we had a wet
Wow.
early summer. But
That was similar to us last year also.
oh, it was amazing. I know that it won't happen this year. It's been so wet already, but it's just any diseases that are coming in with that. So we're just looking at powdery and downy, trying to keep all of that cleared out. It's really about your vineyard practices, keeping your canopy as clean as possible, spray programs, leaf pulling, hedging, weed management, keeping it as safe as you can so you don't have to worry as much. But we can only control what we can control.
Do most vineyards in Pennsylvania have a decent slope built on hills and whatnot?
Yeah, mostly, yes. Most people have your southern facing slopes. I think a lot of people have been growing for 20 plus years, and there was a really great establishment of the first generation of people planting where they were working together really well or communicating or doing their homework. And that was when land was maybe a little bit more accessible than it is now to start a vineyard. And most growers really did a good job at doing their homework. And you do have those really beautiful hillsides, and they follow the sun patterns really well. The diurnal shifts are really nice. And I think a lot of growers did their homework very appropriately.
I understand that is important before you start a vineyard.
Probably one of the most important things you can do for yourself.
Do you know, this is a question that I wasn't expecting to ask, but it's just coming to my brain. If most rows in Pennsylvania are north south orientation or west east?
Most are north south, so that they're going down. You have your south facing slopes. There's definitely some crossover going either way. And with that, I don't see a huge change in growing patterns depending on your site, but there's definitely a combination. But that north south is definitely more prominent.
Hmm. While we're talking about some of these things, one of the things that I definitely wanted to hear your experiences about was spotted lanternfly. I know our mutual friend Darren had a lot of things to say about it and his experiences, and it was very interesting to hear about because most of my colleagues in the Finger Lakes, I don't think, have had such substantial experiences. What's your experience been like in Pennsylvania?
So I don't remember exactly what Darren had said, but the spotted lanternfly originated less than a mile from Blair's vineyard.
I think he mentioned exactly that actually.
Yeah. So there's 2 vineyard sites with Blair, associated with Blair. There's the home vineyard, which is about 3 acres, and then the main vineyard where the 25 plus acres are. So the small vineyard is where the spotted lanternflies arrived and just completely decimated that. But nobody even knew what, these things were. So we've had
They killed the
experience.
vineyard.
They killed the vineyard. Yeah. It was just totally decimated. We took the
Wow.
whole vineyard out. We let it go, like fallow for a couple of years, and then we ended up replanting the entire vineyard, which
God
was a really
bless.
cool project. We grafted every single vine that went into that and planted them by hand. So start to finish, we regrew that vineyard, which is really cool. Um, but the lanternflies, they're here. We see them. The mature lanternflies are arriving. They started seeing them maybe a week ago. Um, really, at this point, we take care of them like we do any other pest. I'm not really concerned about them. There was definitely some damage obviously, vineyards were totally decimated, but there was definitely some vines struggling that people were working with because they feed on the sap. So we saw that stressors. But at this point, we treat them like any other pest, and they're mostly more annoying than they are damaging. So it's controversial to say that because there's a lot of research going into that, and I do work with a lot of researchers, and they're really trying. People are trying really hard to figure out what we can do for them, and they're very unpredictable at this point. We thought that they were going away, and then last fall we got inundated with them again. They just laid eggs. It was crazy, the amount. So now we're dealing with the repercussions of that, but there's people doing their research. We're trying to figure it out. They're making their way around the country though, so don't worry too much, but take care of them.
My recollection is that Darren's feeling was that they like to live in like trees and wooded areas, and so vineyards that were closer to like a tree line were often they were more likely to be their number and to do damage, whereas if your vineyard was more alone and away from other wooded areas, that maybe you were less likely to experience issues. Does that ring true with your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have just more of an open field situation or neighbors, you're probably fine, especially if you're already dealing with other pests that you're taking care of. But there's been years where our tree line, and I'm talking like a tree line, the rest of it is clear. We watched it like black clouds of these lanternflies coming in just on one singular day. So we still don't totally understand how or why they find the vines. I think Darren had even said there's probably a pheromone that's related to them from their original location. But the research is still in the works and trying to figure it out. But if you have a tree line, definitely keep an eye on that. The researchers are now finding that they're laying eggs even like under rocks in the soil.
Oh my
If we
God.
dig down to like the bare bones of the soil, you can find eggs all the way down there. When originally we were just seeing it just on the trunk. So they're getting either more creative or we're just digging deeper. I'm not totally sure,
Oh,
but
that's a terrifying thought.
it is terrifying.
They're finding ways to evade.
They're annoying. They're definitely a pest and it's very serious, but I think if you're already taking care of other populations, like we do have problems with Japanese beetle and leafhoppers and whatever else. Keep an eye out, keep scouting, definitely keep in touch with your local research groups, and there's ways around it, at least for now. And unfortunately, as it spreads farther into the country, there's going to be even more research available and there are people doing their jobs, but give me a call if you have any questions.
I will. When I first see one, I'm going to call you and Darren and be like, talk me off this cliff.
Oh no. They're pretty though. I'll give them that.
They are very cool. Yeah.
They have these little feet, like they're like little grippers, and they love landing on your neck. And that's the most annoying thing. They will always land on your neck and their feet almost like squeeze in a little bit.
Ugh.
And it just like they just hold onto your skin. You can feel them like not pinching, it doesn't hurt, but you can just feel them gripping on you because the mature ones are like the size of your thumb digit, whatever that's called. So they're big
Like
and
an
they're
inch long?
yeah, totally. And they're kind of dumb. Like they just smack into you, their feet kind of grip onto you, and you just feel them. And they've got these big red beady eyes, and they just look at you, and then they fly and jump away. And always approach them from the front. I think Darren may have said that, but if you're gonna squish them, which you should, get them from the front, not from the back. That's the only way.
Spotted fly experts here on how to
Yeah,
squish them.
it's fabulous. Give me a call.
That's so funny. As somebody who's both spent some time in the vineyard and in the cellar and has been related to a couple different businesses, do you perceive that, like regarding the urge and inclination, I think, for businesses to want to be able to use words like sustainable and organic on their labels. Do you feel like there's moral, societal pressure to go in that direction? And is it increasing? Do you think it matters to the customer? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's kind of tricky because on a personal, very personal level, of course, I want things to be as organic and as sustainable as possible.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, everything I do, and I think the collective narrative is trying to do things as carefully and mindfully as possible. Realistically, we are working farms and we have to do what we have to do. Um, I think that marketing and branding is incredibly important, and those hot words come and go. I think it does depend on your location. I would say that our region is a little less caring of those words. We do like, I'm in farm country and people are more here for, like, the product and the experience. I think the relationship you're having with your customer service base and what your experience is more important than those hot topic words, but I think overall, those are the practices that we should all be aiming for.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. It's just recently been in my mind. I was having a discussion with somebody who is the manager at a liquor store about a winery who was trying to find ways to, in the store, I think, put in bold letters that they were using sustainable vineyard practices. And we were having kind of a philosophical discussion on how many customers that actually turns into potential customers actually turns into real sales, and if there's a distinction between, wanting that to be the case versus actually seeing it on the bottle. And for that reason, it being the bottle that you choose,
Mhm.
which, was not something that I had really considered until I started having that conversation, because like and I think like most people, everybody wants to be nice to the earth, or all the nice people that are reasonable want to do things that are not damaging to the world around us. But the kind of where that conversation ended up was basically saying, I'm sure it matters to some degree, but I almost have a feeling that looking organic or looking sustainable, like a
Mm.
brown label that's like minimalist and, gives that natty vibe, is almost maybe more important because,
Well, the
I could
legalities,
just
what are the
people,
legalities?
yeah, I mean, maybe I need a marketing person to be able to tell me how to convert customers, but it's just it feels like something where there's increased talk about it, and on like the business side of the wine industry, on having that information be a customer facing and is especially important. And I feel like I'm trying to get a handle myself on how people in the industry who are not the business owners consider that issue, and as a customer, how much it affects them. I mean,
Mhm.
I like to see sustainability on a label, but I don't know that I've ever held two bottles side by side, and because one said sustainable and one didn't, gone with the one that said it, and maybe that's on me. I'm totally open to that. And if people want to email me and criticize me, that's fine. eastcoastwinemaking@gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email if you like or dislike any of the things that I'm saying or want to chime in. I'm interested in hearing everybody's opinion. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Well, Charlotte, I think that's pretty much all I have for you. Is there anything that I missed out on that you would like people to have in their minds when they think about Pennsylvania wine or the industry or you, especially if they're outsiders or people unfamiliar with what's going on, or if you want to direct it toward wine drinking Pennsylvanians, is there anything on your mind?
Uh, I think the biggest thing is a push for Pennsylvania. There's so many wineries and growing regions here, and it should be a destination for people. We're definitely doing it. We've been doing it. Vynecrest, where I'm working at, we are celebrating the 51st year for making wine, growing grapes,
Hey,
which is amazing.
that's great.
Um, and with total success and with something for everybody. And I think that it's not recognized enough that we are doing it and we're capable. And there's some really incredible people out here. And maybe that's on us that we're not vocal enough. But I do think that anybody can find something that they're looking for out here and give it a try. Come
Yeah,
visit, come hang out.
that's super interesting. I will say, having this discussion with you definitely makes me want to taste more Pennsylvania wine and do some exploring. It seems a little daunting because the thought of looking at the state of Pennsylvania and
Yeah.
determining where I'm interested in exploring, like how could you
Yeah.
possibly
You have to
choose?
commit.
Yeah. Yeah. But, it also gives me perspective thinking about the Finger Lakes region and how it compares geographically to where you are. We kind of have this because we're centered around these lakes that are like relatively right next to each other. There's kind of a easy we're neighbors necessarily because we're centered around these lakes, and I wonder if that makes it a little bit easier for people to communicate, and be on the same page. Whereas these issues that we've discussed regarding the limited capability of Pennsylvania wine producers to communicate with each other, it seems like it naturally should be a lot more difficult, because you don't have that same the geography pushing you to the same place together. So that's really interesting. I'll be interested to see how that changes over time, or with what people's interest in buying is, and determining a signature variety for the state and that sort of thing.
Yeah, me too. But just to say, like where I am at Vynecrest, there's 2 wineries within 2 miles, and then I don't know, at least 5 within 10 to 15 minutes drive.
Oh, wow.
So we're not as close, you're at the Finger Lakes, you're boom, boom, boom. But where we are in the Lehigh Valley, there's so many, and there's always new ones coming up. And people, we are communicating, we work together, we're neighbors, and 5, 10, 20, 50 years people have been doing this. So there's definitely a community. Philly's got a bunch of urban wineries popping up, and they're sourcing their grapes locally. I've grown
That's
grapes
awesome.
for the urban wineries in Philly, which is awesome. And there's some really, really high class wines coming out. It's just quieter, is really all I'd say.
Yeah. Interesting. I've never been to an urban winery before, and but I've heard of a couple in Philly and in New York, and it's something that I'd love to do. I mean, we kind of have one maybe here in Rochester called Living Roots, depending on how you define urban winery. But ones in Philly sound like they would be a really interesting experience.
They're awesome. They're the 3, there's one main one, but there's about 3 plus. They're great people and they're doing really cool things, and it's such a vibe when you go to these places. It's totally different from being out at a winery that's surrounded by the vineyards, but great people, great goals, very mindful and very comfortable settings. And they're doing great things. And they're sourcing their grapes from people who care about growing. And they come out to the regions, they do the scouting, they're making choices with the growers, and can't talk highly enough about them. Like, everybody's working together, and that's really awesome. Collaboration is the key.
That is awesome. The way that you make it sound, I have always felt like given the Finger Lakes is like not a world renowned region yet, much like Pennsylvania, we're blossoming flowers. That I think that to some degree contributes to the community wanting to work together. Mm-hmm. And the way that you talk about the relationship with neighboring wineries sounds like there's a similar spirit of community and wanting everybody to succeed rather than, it being negatively competitive or something like that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely agree with that philosophy. You're stronger together, and anybody working with your neighbors is the best way to go. We're in it together, and the more the merrier, in my opinion.
And it just seems like it would make everybody's life happier.
Yeah, and it's more fun, collaboration, shared experience is like the key to winemaking. You don't have a bottle of wine by yourself and enjoy it the way you do when you're at a dinner or around the table. You don't make a bottle of wine by yourself. There's just no way that you're growing everything, making all these decisions and making that bottle without having some kind of collective narrative. So why not be doing this with your neighbors also?
Totally. Okay, well, one last question, and then I'll let you get back to the rest of your evening. Thank you for letting me take up so much of your time tonight. My wrap-up question, which is, what will you drink for dinner? It's 8:30, or it's almost 9. I presume that you already had dinner, but on average, what do you drink with dinner? Water, beer, milk?
Oh, not milk. I'm a beer person. I will be typically drinking Yuengling Lager.
Yuengling, Pennsylvania.
Yuengling Lager, that's my jam, or Miller Lite. Wine if I have company, but typically not solo.
Nice. That just reminds me of a story about Yuengling that you may appreciate. I was out to sushi dinner with a friend, and I ordered a Tsingtao, I think, and she was looking at the menu and she said, "I'd like a Yuengling, please." And the waitress walked away, and I said, Yuengling is from Pennsylvania, right?
Amazing.
The way that it was pronounced, she was under the impression that it was, not from Pennsylvania, that it was from somewhere in Asia. That it was just one of the funnier things that I had ever seen in person happen. So awesome. Now maybe next time you drink Yuengling, you can appreciate that it's from the motherland.
Feel very cultural. This is very exciting now.
Yeah, who knew that knowledge of Pennsylvania beer would have been like the culture that I needed to give somebody the information that they didn't have.
Amazing.
All right, Charlotte, thank you so much for your time. It was really nice to chit chat with you. I wish you all of the luck in your future endeavors, and I look forward to reconnecting as your experience changes and taste some of the wines you make and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much, John.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you all so much for listening. I'm thrilled you could make it to the end of the podcast. If you have any thoughts on questions you'd like me to ask or comments about your experience, I'd love to hear them. Please don't hesitate to email me at eastcoastwinemaking@gmail.com. Until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day.